welcome to Vahe Presents The Outside View, co-powered by Swara and Fantasy Akhada. We are here to review the first T20I match between India and England, which happened last night in Durham. Mohit Shah joins me as an expert. Mohit, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Heavy defeat for India, Mohit. To begin the series after the Commonwealth Games, we were quite optimistic, and so were you, that India has got a lot of things going on for themselves. But last night, does that give a reality check again? Is India, because England were a little, you can call them a depleted side with no Heather Knight, no Nat Sever, no Catherine Brunt. Still, they managed to beat India, which the loss happens to be India's heaviest loss in T20I format. So, what did you make of the game?
Yeah, like you said, it was a very depleted England side. In fact, I think this was the first time that none of the 2017 World Cup winning players were a part of England's T20I side ever since they started playing T20Is. And you mentioned all those big names that were missing. So India losing is fine, but I think just the way they lost and the margin of the loss was very significant, because I thought 130 was obviously 132 was obviously a little under par, but they could have made a much better contest out of it. I think their bowling and their fielding especially was very disappointing, because people will talk about the conditions and the rain and everything, but ultimately the conditions are the same for both the teams, and I felt England were a lot better in the field and also with the ball. So I think India would be really disappointed with that fielding performance, because ultimately the conditions are the same, and they ended up bowling no balls and a lot of wides, and there were also a lot of misfields on the boundary, and those are the basics. So I don't think bowling no balls or wides has to do a lot with the conditions, or not chasing down balls which are easily chaseable. So I think the fielding was quite under par, in considering the fact that both Ramesh Pawar and Harmanpreet have been talking about focusing on the fielding for a long time. I think there's still a long way to go for this Indian team when it comes to the fielding side of things.
Very rightly said, India's fielding was quite bad and disappointing to watch last night. But Harmanpreet Kaur, the skipper, had a few words to say about the conditions that were in Durham last night. She said that the conditions were not 100% foolproof for playing. What did you make of that quote? What exactly was she pointing out?
None of us were at the ground, so we don't really know how bad the conditions were. But like I was saying, ultimately it is the same conditions for both the teams. And if you want to be a champion side, I think you should be able to play in all conditions. And to be fair to the umpires, there was no rain in the time that the match was on. So I think in such situations, if the ground is reasonably clear, play generally happens, because we saw during the test yesterday, they stopped play for bad light, and that ended up getting a lot of flack. So I think if there's so many spectators that have turned up at the ground and the players are also there, it's always better to get a game in. So I don't think I would read too much into those comments. Had India won, I don't think she would have been making the same comments. So I don't really want to give too much credence to those comments, because England turned up and they were just the better side on the day, whatever the conditions were.
Rightly said, England was the better team, but India made a couple of changes. Jemima Rodriguez missed out of the side, having not been recovered yet. We saw Hemlata come at number 3. Sabbirini Meghna was there in the side, who was somebody who was the preferred number 3 or top order batter in the last few months leading into this series. She was there and sitting out on the bench. Did that surprise you, Mohit? Because I'm guessing Kiran Navgare, once she was named in that side, she was always going to bat at number 6. That should not be the surprising factor. But what did you make of Hemlata batting at number 3?
I was surprised by Hemlata batting at 3. I was not really surprised by her inclusion, because Meghna got all those 3 T20Is back to back in the Sri Lanka series, and then she got an opportunity in the Commonwealth Games as well, but she didn't really capitalize on any of those chances. So I thought it was fair to include Hemlata, because she's been in really good form on the domestic circuit. But she's a batter who probably is more suited to the middle order or the lower middle order. And considering you have Jemima, who's going to own that number 3 spot once she's fit, I think India would have been better served, like just bumping up Harmanpreet Kaur to number 3, especially after that great start that they got yesterday. And Hemlata would have probably slotted in later in the innings, because I think like that role was very unfamiliar for her. So she ended up playing a lot of dot balls, which like kind of sucked the momentum out of the innings. So I was happy with her inclusion, but I think India should probably bat her at number 4 or 5, which is where she like generally bats for the Railways as well on the domestic circuit.
And so just let's just touch upon England's bowling last night. Sarah Glenn was so impressive with the ball. She was brave enough to fly the deliveries from time to time. She was with just like her growth in the last few years have been quite good, and she has now sort of made herself sort of one of the top players to be picked up whenever England plays at T20I. Her partnership with Sophie Ecclestone is quite good, because there is always a pressure of bowling with somebody who is the number 1 bowler in 2 formats in the international rankings. So how do you see Sarah Glenn's growth as a player in the last few months? And last night's performance was just to say that she has actually grown as a player.
Yeah, like she's really improved a lot over the years. She was always a good bowler, but I think like that decision to take a break during the World Cup has really helped her, because that like allowed her to like take some time off from the game. And then ever since she's come back, she's bowled really well, be it like in the T20Is against South Africa or during the 100. And what I think she does really well is she adjusts and reacts very well to what the batters are doing. So she's not a big turner of the ball like say Amanda Jade Wellington or Poonam Yadav, but she has very good variation. So she has a good googly, and like if the batters are like stepping out early or something of that sort, like we saw with Harmanpreet yesterday, she's very quick to like pull the length back. Or similarly for batters like sitting very deep in the crease, she's not like afraid to bowl a little more fuller. And I think she got the big wickets yesterday. She got Shafali Verma and Harmanpreet Kaur, both of whom were looking in reasonably good touch. And I think she got Richa Ghosh as well. So those were like the 3 most dangerous players in India's batting lineup. So I think she completely like was instrumental in restricting India to that under par score on that pitch, because at one point it did look like India would get a score in excess of 150. And there are a lot of other good spinners that are there on the circuit in England. Somebody like Charlie Dean's not even a part of this squad. So like you said, there is a lot of pressure because Sophie Ecclestone is a sure shot pick. But I think Sarah Glenn's done enough in the last 2 or 3 months to now be the second choice spinner, at least in the T20I format, like you rightly said. So yeah, Sarah Glenn's performance is probably the biggest positive for England from yesterday's match, because again, it was not easy and the ball was getting wet and she was drying the ball every time the ball went to the outfield. So I think it was a really good performance, especially considering the conditions.
That was it from our side for the review of the first T20I match between England and India. It was a disappointing loss for India, and England will celebrate it heading into the next game. But stay tuned to Women's Cricket Zone for all the latest news on women's cricket.